Hello and welcome back to HYM5, where in today's short video I'm going to be talking to you about Data Protection Impact Assessments, or DPIAs as they're commonly referred to. Now a DPIA in simple terms is a form of risk assessment and a really important tool that you have as a school to identify the risks associated with a particular system that you use and then to put measures in place which will allow you to mitigate against those risks. Now in some circumstances under the UK GDPR, there's a legal obligation to carry out a DPIA. But you don't need to get too hung up on whether that legal obligation arises or not, because it's really good practice whenever you're thinking about introducing a new system to carry out a DPIA, and of course the ICO recommend that you do so. So if you make sure that you carry out that DPIA on all new systems, then you're going to comply with the legal obligation. Now you need to really think about DPIAs as not being some type of tick box exercise. They're a really important aspect of the planning stage of the introduction of any new system that you're thinking about bringing into the school. And it's really helpful to make this point by way of an analogy. So let's think about a school trip. If you're going to have a school trip, one of the first things that you're going to think about is carrying out a risk assessment. You'd want to know what the risks are associated with the potential venue and the individuals that are going to be going on that trip, and thinking about the types of measures that you need to put in place to make sure those risks do not arise. And you need to think about data protection impact assessments as the equivalent of that type of risk assessment. And they should form a really important intrinsic part of the planning stage of introducing a new system. Now on the whiteboard here, we have a number of potential fertile areas, some of which may create the legal obligation to carry out a DPIA. So most schools will now have a central IMS system, so think about SIMS, Arbor, ScholarPack, or other systems of that nature. As the data controller, it's your responsibility to carry out data protection impact assessment and to understand what risks may arise and what measures that you need to put in place to prevent those risks from arising. Now, of course, that type of system is the home to some of the most significant amounts of information that you'll have in the school, both non-sensitive and special category data type information. So it's really important that you carry out DPIA there. Similar, if you think about safeguarding systems, you might use CPOMs, MyConcern, or a whole range of other types of systems for that purpose. Of course, safeguarding data contains a lot of special category data, and therefore you need to again think about the risks. So we suggest that you carry out a DPIA there. Cashless catering systems, very much used by schools these days, but will often require the use of biometric data or fingerprints, which are often used. Now that's an example of special category data where explicit consent is required, and a properly conducted DPIA would have identified the need for that type of consent. You should also think about CCTV systems, and what we don't have on the board here are learning platforms. Teachers probably come to you frequently and they'll want to use a particular piece of software, technology, application, which will allow them to deliver classroom lessons. Now before doing that, it should really flag up the need to carry out a DPIA to make sure that the risks are identified and mitigated. It's insufficient to be of the view that, well, other schools use this type of technology. You are the data controller as the school and you're responsible for assessing the risks. Now in terms of how to carry out the DPIA itself, you need to have the right type of document to do that. And the Information Commissioner's Office have published their own specific data protection impact assessment template, which you can download and use. Or if we're your DPO, we have our own bespoke data protection impact assessment template which you can use. Now a really important aspect of a DPIA is advice, and the person who provides that advice is your DPO. So your DPO is your expert in data protection laws and practice, and they should provide their advice in relation to the proposed introduction of the system, and that should be recorded within the DPIA. And as the expert in data protection law and practice, the DPO may be able to identify other risks which you've not necessarily identified and what measures might need to be put in place to mitigate against those risks arising. So do make sure that you consult your DPO. So if you're able to identify the need to carry out a DPIA and make it an important part of your planning when you're introducing new systems into the school. You'll be able to identify the risks, you'll be able to put mitigating measures in place to prevent those risks from arising, and you'll be able to demonstrate that you're processing personal information in accordance with the UK GDPR.